so I'm delighted to be here. You know, the thing that I want to talk about is leadership today. I think a lot of us in the room, a lot of designers outside of the room want to have a seat at the table. Why? Because we want to do better design. And we know if we're not represented at senior-most levels where decisions get made, where influence is really needed to allow the environment for great design to happen, then we lose out. We don't get to have the impact that we know we can. The question, actually what I'm seeing is more and more designers getting a seat at the table. I'm seeing more people with the title Chief Design Officer at major organizations, major corporations, right? We are getting a seat at the table that 20 years ago we would never, we dreamed of, but never really saw happening. The question that I'd like to address is, how do you get there? How do you get there faster so that you deserve to be there? Because I think that's really the challenge for design right now. The challenge is we're being invited to the table because design thinking is cool all of a sudden, because a lot of you all have done great work that's getting attention to the contributions of the IDEOs and the ZEBAs and the Continuums and the, all the organizations that are out there doing great work. Suddenly now we've got some momentum. We've got the academic world, the business school world saying this is pretty cool. I'm regular conversations with Bain, BCG, Monitor, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte. They're all going, hey, this design thinking stuff sounds pretty cool. We need that, right? So the world is now opening up to invite us in. So how do we deserve and how do we deserve a place at the table? And the context for what I want to talk about is leadership. How am I thinking about, why is this important to me? I'm actually doing research now on leadership as a subject, kind of formally with Carnegie Mellon. So I'm interviewing senior leaders, and it's kind of that thinking space that I've been in a while that I want to share a little bit of the thinking in the few minutes that we have. Let's see if that works. And so far it's not. Okay, it is. Am I running this one? Okay, this is working. Great. So how did I come to leadership? I think it's important to say I just haven't decided to talk about leadership because I think it's cool. It kind of has been a part of how my career has evolved, and I kind of want to share that path a little bit with you. There we go. Design. So I started as a card-carrying graphic designer. Was trained in graphic design, kind of left it, and then came back into the area of design research. So I joined Cheskin. So very early on in the movement toward more human-centered design or design research, really starting to actually invent that practice because it really didn't exist so much in the 70s, right? And it was emergent and formative in the 80s. So it's actually trying to convince the design industries, industrial design, graphic design, architectural design, that consumer research or being human-centric would be valuable. And believe it or not, that was a real debate. And we would have knock-down, drag-out arguments about that because designers were arbiters of taste. Designers made cool. Why? Because they said it was cool. And they all gave each other awards for products that never sold, but were black and shiny and sleek, and everyone agreed they were really cool, right? So it was kind of that era that I moved into design research because I wanted to make better design. I wanted to have design that really served people, right? We all know there's a lot of crappy design out there, and I didn't want any part of that. And yet I'm faced with clients who couldn't recognize crappy design from good design. Well, design research was a way to do that, to have the evidence to say, this is good design. Your customer loves it. You'll make money. You have to listen to them. So that was the next phase that I did. After doing that a long time, what I realized was that my clients were almost everyone taking design as discrete projects and not managing design across in any kind of integrated way. So the practice of just not producing good design, but good design that actually created a broad user experience was the practice of design management. So I started getting retained to manage large global design programs for large corporations, kind of dealing with the politics, but systematizing design, right? And that moved me up a level to start interacting across organizations, across different regions, et cetera. Kind of the next level that I hit was, okay, now I'm doing this design management work, but it's not just systematizing the current brand assets. We need to actually we need to use design more effectively to create the next iteration or perspective on organization, which was the area of innovation. So most of the work that we were doing was in the context of innovation. And so I started advising or consulting on innovation processes and building cultures of innovation. The next levels above that were strategy, because after you can have a great innovation process, but what I found was all these major corporations that I thought would be so together actually weren't doing strategy, and they weren't doing anything around innovation strategy, right? We'll recognize great design when we see it, was basically the strategy, right? Which is really hard given how risky innovation is. So then I started facilitating strategy, and the thing that I am at right now, kind of giving you the whole arc of my about 35 years of design industry work, where I am right now is realizing, you know what, you can have, to create strategy, you actually have to have people that have some skills and talent and capability to do that, and that requires leadership. That you just can't say, here's a process to create strategy. You have to have people willing and capable of stepping into a strategic conversation that have some skills around that. They have to know who they are, right? As people, they have to understand their values and principles. They have to be a zealot, you have to know what you stand for. I love that presentation for that purpose. So the question, that's how I've got to this question around what is good leadership and how do we acquire it. What's in it for you is leadership. Developing your skills in leadership is the fastest way to move up in your organization to have more impact and therefore do better design. So you can keep focusing on doing better and better design work and creating better and better experiences for your users, and you'll have a noble career, you'll do great. And that's honorable work. But if you want to have a broader impact for your departments, for yourself and for your organization, becoming a leader, improving your leadership skills is what's going to move you up. Okay? So my focus today is what's changing in the world of strategy, of business and design today that might change expectations of us as leaders. What's changing in the world that's changing the requirements, and what kind of change is opening up new opportunities for us? So that's the question I wanted to be focused on for a while here. And I want to end with what behaviors you can change now to increase the value of your contributions. So in a limited period of time, I can only give you a few nuggets and kind of open some doors, but I hope I provoke you in a way that has you at least take some notes about what you might do differently, right? And start that conversation. So the context for leadership that's probably most important is change. You know, we all know the world is changing faster than ever before. I'm using an ugly stock image to emphasize that this is not new. In fact, I used an image like this more than 20 years ago in speeches about how change is accelerating, and this is a pretty consistent theme in public speaking circles in innovation. Yes, we've got a lot of change and it's going faster. However, it really is going faster in a more dramatic way right now. The experience of change And the more senior you are in an organization and the larger that organization is, the more the experience is that there is just no more normal state anymore. You know, we used to have change, and we would have a big change, and then we would adapt and, you know, and find stasis again, and then there'd be another big change. And now it's just change, 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 right? It's continuous and it's relentless. That's the experience. So it's kind of like riding a mechanical bull, which I'm told by aficionados is the best strategy for that is tequila, if you want to really stay on the bull for a long time. But it only goes faster and faster, right? That's what it feels like. Okay. So change itself is changing. That's my assertion, that the nature of change is changing, not just in scope and velocity, but constancy and pervasiveness. That the changes that are going on are structural, right? So we're going from stable environments to perpetually unstable environments. We're going from an evolutionary change that organizations have done for years to more discontinuous change. Simple systems and simple definitions of product and service to really great complexity and variation. Our job as designers is much more difficult. You know, Mariana and I mean, almost all the presentations today talked about multi-channel. You know, the matrix is getting more and more columns as we try to create solutions to that make sense. That didn't used to be that so. You know, it used to be pretty simple. We used to have just clear profit and growth objectives. Businesses are in business to make profit. You know, now we've got, you know, triple bottom line and quadruple bottom line and purpose-led organizations. We've got all these, you know, really incredible mandates that go far beyond the simple world that we had there. We used to be able to control the environment. Our large corporations were more powerful than the market because they dominated it. They, you know, you could advertise the hell out of things and make markets, right? You were stronger and more powerful than the market itself. Now that's not true. You know, now our best hope is harmonizing with the environment. So if I can keep going on this, and you could add to it too. If you add the internet, if you add globalization, if you add social networking, you get the idea that those are structural changes that enable even greater change at a faster and faster rate. That's what we're into. So the context for all of us in leaders, especially in senior leadership positions, is dealing with that change. It's the dominant challenge that we face as leaders today. So change and facing that change is very, very difficult. One, it's very hard to see. What do I mean by that? Change is emergent. How do I know that it's really an important change to pay attention to? I was one of the first couple thousand people on LinkedIn. There were a whole lot of other things going on that I had as alternatives to LinkedIn. You know, and I said, okay, I'll try it. You know, now there's, you know, how many hundreds of millions? You know, being early on, how do you separate signal from noise? That's the hard part of change. You know, and if you wait until there's a common consensus, this is an important change, you've kind of lost your ability and your advantage to really move quickly. It's hard to analyze because it's emergent. There's not a whole lot of data. There's no proof that exists. Because there's no data and proof that exists, it's hard to prioritize. And because it's hard to prioritize there, it's hard to mobilize action around, to convince us that we should take this approach to a technology or this kind of experience in innovation if it's really based on change. So the nature of change is really challenging for us to manage in change, to drive change. The thing that leaders need to do today, I say, is to be a catalyst for change. So what's the right attitude toward change? It's to be a catalyst for change. That means you've got change in your bones, right? that you are surfing change. You are welcoming and embracing change. Not resisting it, but jumping into it. You think, how do I catalyze change? How do I be, in my organization, the kind of leader that instigates change? And I pressed the wrong button there, but we'll go with that one. So, any Downton Abbey fans? Okay, so there is a time to resist change. You know, and this character, you know, the leadership style of this character, if you don't know, is very much, I'm a caretaker. I'm a steward of this organization, right? It's all about safety and you know, a real kind of perpetuation of the organization. Resisting change is one of the things we need to be able to do. We also need to be able to accommodate change. This is Michael Porter, you know, his 5 forces. If you're not familiar with Porter's 5 forces and you want to be taken seriously by the MBAs who report that you might report up through, you at least need to Google that or, you know, scan a book there. It's really about accommodating the competitive environment and competitive change. So look up Michael Porter and get some of that language. But so that's not just resisting change, but it's accommodating change. And then finally, it's asserting change. When do we assert change? When we say the status quo in email is not sufficient, right? And we're going to change the whole category or whole industry to do things that no one else has done before. When are we going to create our own weather? So being a catalyst means knowing when to resist change, knowing when to accommodate change, and when to assert change. You know, and I think naive, some designers, you know, we all love to assert, you know, change. You know, and you know, if you don't have a balance there to be able to really sense when you should accommodate or even resist change, and you don't have that in some kind of balance, you're going to be treated as, you know, a flaky designer. Right? So you got to understand that and put that into context. And we need to know how to mobilize action for change. So it's not just having a point of view on change, it's mobilizing others. Now, one of the things that I noticed, so how many of you had your formative business training and management experiences before the year 2000? So you went to school, you got trained, and you had bosses that were, you know, okay? So at least half the room, probably 3/4 of the room, most of us have grown up and had our formative experiences in the 20th century here. And the 20th century really was, you know, a business culture that came out of manufacturing, big manufacturing in places like Cleveland, where it was all about command and control and power and decision making in a stable environment. Okay? Those were the assumptions that's what leadership and management was really about. Right? So it was all about conquering complexity. How do we scale and conquer complexity? How do we have structured processes that eliminate risk? How do we plan and build in a clear, processive way that is safe? How do we have focused action and brevity? How can we make this meeting, this management meeting, you know, that's scheduled for an hour, how can we make this 15 minutes? You know, because my job as a leader is to decide. So let's get to the decision versus how do we find truth, right? No conversation about that. It was all about, you know, brevity there. So it was mostly around accommodating changes or resisting changes. As we go into the 21st century, well, things started to really change. We started to think about leading rather than managing. Leading change means anticipating change. What are you doing to anticipate change in your business and in your industry? declaring a collective vision, right? If we want to mobilize people, we need to declare, to speak a vision that inspires them, that invites them in. You know, leaders need followers. You've got to hold yourself accountable for creating followers there. It's about boldness and courage. You know, a lot of us designers are introverts. Get over it. If you want to be a leader, you can't be, you know, you can't allow yourself to retreat in being an introvert. You've got to be forward in that and be bold. It's a lot about not risk avoidance, it's about risk taking. It's about leveraging insights, acquiring insights, being smarter, explorative, iterative, experimental, and as I said, embracing the chaos there, surfing change. It's about asserting change now. So how many of you, and I'll just go back. So some of your comfort zone, not where the magic happens, but in that comfort zone graphic, I love that one, are more comfortable managing than in this leadership space. Raise your hand if you're more, I mean, all of us have a comfort zone. How many of you, raise your hand, more comfort in the managing space? Come on, come on. Okay. And how many more are more comfortable in the leading space? Okay. Slightly more in the leading space than I would have thought. Think of Peter Drucker. I think really a great guy, very influential on me, but really from an era that was all about management science and accommodating change. And the poster child for asserting change is of course Steve Jobs there. The thing is, we need both change managers and change leaders. There isn't a right or wrong way to be here. Both organizations need to have both of those things going on. We need a culture that acknowledges the values of both of those, tolerates them, and embodies them both. And you need to understand where you fit in that. Because, you know what? Your organization needs change managers, people who can produce and keep the trains running on time are very, very valuable and are less likely to get fired at the drop of a hat, too, in the next reorg. People, and we need change leaders, all right? So being clear about those roles, and when is it time to stick your head up and take on the persona of a change leader, and when is it time to keep your head down? Mariana just gave us some, examples of kind of both of those worlds and some of the risks that goes along with it. So not only is the world changing here, but our profession is changing too. So I want to talk about how that is, and I'm going to use Dick's 4 orders. By the way, Dick is a hero of mine, mentor of mine. He's kind of the Obi-Wan of design theory for me. So I'm going to talk about 4 orders. This is a way I've described what Dick talks about, and I might even get down to what's the elevator pitch that you want to say about design. I've found this with non-design audiences. So you guys all know what design is. I'm not sharing it because I think you don't know. I'm sharing a construct that is an adaptation from Dick's thinking that I've found very useful at telling CEOs and leaders of large organizations, what this design thing is. So design has evolved from symbology, graphic design, creation of artifacts of communication, words, graphics, colors, and patterns. You all know that when you introduce yourself as designers that at least half the people are thinking, oh, he's a color guy. My wife's going to choose some drapes. Could you go talk to her in the living room? Because, right, we've all had that experience. Okay, now, important, deep design discipline. I've got heroes here who have spent their life and made huge contributions in creating a depth of mastery at symbology. The second order of design that Dick talks about is really the domain of objects here, which is the creation of functional, desirable, and useful products and environments. I throw in environments. I'm not sure you do, but I think of this stuff, it's physical stuff, and I throw architecture into that in my own thinking. So it's symbols and graphics. And by the way, they're in concentric circles because to be a good industrial designer today or good architect, pretty soon you're going to have to deal with color, form, shape, texture, words, type, right? Now, design evolved from those two core disciplines to interaction design, which is interaction design, experience design, service design. So, sound familiar? This is where y'all live, right? And the fourth order of design, kind of the next iteration of design, as the field has expanded in the last few years, is kind of systems design. It's business design, as Dick talked about, the design of organizations. It's often what, in a shortcut explanation is kind of the domain of design thinking. It's creating systems of thought. It's organizational design. It's the design of culture. So the most common request I get is, can you help us create a culture of innovation in our organization? Because we beat the crap out of people who are trying to innovate, right? Because our culture, when you scratch behind, well, what does that mean? And you go to these cultures, and maybe some of you who inhabit large organizations experience this, but there are a lot of organizations where the experience, if you're an innovator or a designer, is an environment of resentment, fear, mistrust. It's not a fun, warm and fuzzy environment, yet we know to be innovative, to have that wild and cool kind of environment that we are most creative in, we've got to create that. So we have to think about what's the culture, what's the system, how do we create culture? What are the elements of culture that we can confidently and consciously design against? So that's fourth order. And then what are the strategies that can help we can deploy to make that happen? So this is just a framework that I found very useful to say, I know you think of design as this graphic stuff, and maybe you think of it as industrial design, but interaction design requires a mastery of both those skills and is kind of what's happening today. And on the edge is this thing called design thinking and more systems design. That gives people a handle on, oh yeah, it's more than I thought it was. It gives them permission to not necessarily, they don't have to defend their understanding. Right? So if we think about leadership, we still need leadership in the domain of first and second order design. If we think about leadership in the context of experience design, where we're architects of experience, it's interdisciplinary leadership. Because we all know we have multiple disciplines we have to handle. It seems like more disciplines keep getting piled on as technology starts to intersect. And in the fourth order design, it becomes more around being architects of social change. Okay. That's a domain that we are being welcomed into, but we have to be deserving of. Okay. So our discipline has changed, not just the world, but the discipline has changed. Our career, as I see how people's career evolve, I see people starting off as functional service providers, being good designers, doing good design work, and if they're really successful, they become business partners. So the vice president wants to invite you into the meeting when they're talking about the next product. Early, not at the end, but early, because you're a thought partner in that, right? You're contributing there. After you do that really well, then you can be a strategic contributor. So you're going to get invited to the conversation around what should we do next? What do you think about our strategy? What's missing? Right? And then to get really a seat at the table at the highest levels, you need to embody executive leadership, which is bringing something to the table that they don't know, where you're anticipating change, where you've got a strong, grounded point of view about what's important, what we should be paying attention to, and how that should manifest in our business here. Right? So that's how I see people who have made this, this migration here. It's like, and you won't get here without consciously deciding that's what you want to do. Right? No one's going to invite you into that. You have to demonstrate that you are capable. So what should you change to become a better leader? What are some of those tips? I'll give you 3. The first one is about mastering change, which is just changing your stance toward change itself. Like leading into change, embracing change, looking for change, saying, my job is to understand change in the world. Not respond to it, not accommodate it in the designs, but my job is to be out scanning and looking for what is changing that we need to attend to as an organization. To do that, you don't want to expect mastery. If you've got your mastery mindset on, you're going to go very, very deep, and you won't have time to consider what's actually changing over here. You need to learn to be a fast learner. You need to expect disruption. We're going down here. Oh, now we got to go this way. Oh, now there's a new technology that's come up, right? And if you define yourself as mastery, then you're threatened by that. Oh, now I'm worthless. I mean, I invested all this time, but if you define yourself as being a fast learner and surfing change, you won't have that. So, be practical, do what works is another aspect of that. Embrace change, adapt to change in ways that work. What I suggest that you do is study the prince. I don't mean this prince, I mean this prince. So because I'm writing a book on leadership, I've probably read, 25 or 35 books on leadership in the last year. Most of them are pretty terrible. This is one of the best books on leadership I've read. Okay? This guy had it together in the late 1400s. And it's not, he gets a bad rap for being all evil. The guy is just the ultimate pragmatist. And that's my, seriously. If you read it, you go, this guy is actually, he's a survivor. And if you understand what it was like to be in Italy during his era, you kind of go, I get it. How many times were they run over by various different other conquerors? Okay, so that's mastering change. The second one is build situational awareness. Hold yourself accountable for improving your situational awareness, knowing what's going on in the world. That's not necessarily knowing what's going on in design. Yes, you need to do that. What's going on in the world? As you do that, consider what your depth of field is. You all know what depth of field in photography is? How far away are you focusing? Are you just focusing close in, far out, or both? That's depth of field here. So the question is, are you focused on the content of your work? And only on the content of your work? You're not paying attention to what's changing. Are you focused on what's shifting in your organization? What's coming down the pike in terms of the organizational realities that you are going to be faced with? Are you looking even further than that? Are you saying, what's happening with our competition? Or even further than that, what's happening with the context? Because the big changes happen the further out you look. The big changes happen when the rules of the game change. Right? So we should be out looking for, how is our business category going to fundamentally change? How are we going to be disrupted? If you can do that and you can understand it and articulate it, not just be reactive to competition, but really understand fundamental forces at work, you're going to be listened to in your organization. You're going to be invited into senior level conversations that allow you to create interventions with design. So, Human-centered, I love it. I've been advocating it for 30 years. But designers tend to over-rely on a human-centered focus for design and really forget, gosh, what are the market realities? How do we speak that? Maybe we do need to have a little bit more of a quantitative focus, not be repelled by that. Maybe we won't be masterful given that we spent more of our time cross-hatching at 3 o'clock in the morning than studying statistics, but, damn it, we should be really looking at cultural realities, market realities. What's changing in our industry? What's changing in our category? Along with what's changing in our organization, right? So we're not just looking at this customer focus, but we're also looking more broadly at the world. To do that, we need to apply imagination as well. While we're looking, are we just focused on the known stuff? Are we looking at what's probable, what's possible, or unknown? It's really hard to get excited about the areas that are unknown. That's the stuff that should make you uncomfortable, right? There's nothing more perplexing and discomfort creating than trying to understand something you don't have any perspective on. Are you embracing that? Are you holding yourself accountable for welcoming that? Are you asking questions you don't have answers for? So applying imagination, especially as if you want to go from strategic contributor to executive leadership, you've got to have that long view, and you've got to tackle things that aren't just the common wisdom. Third area and last area is you need to step up your leadership. And what do I mean by that? A leader's primary activities are rhetorical and conversational. You've heard a lot, it's been a consistent theme on the stage today about the importance of leading conversation, about communicating not just what we're doing, why we're doing it, communicating the insights that we have. Right? That's really critical. When I was CEO of a consulting firm that got larger and larger and larger, I realized, oh my God, I actually can't do anything. I can only do things through other people. I can only be an effective leader by persuading. If I try to control and make every decision, I'm a bottleneck, and I'm probably going to be not as smart as the people that I've hired, right? So I had to learn that. So thinking about leadership as conversational leadership is what I'm pointing at here. If you want to be a catalyst for change, you need to be able to cohere a collective vision, as I said earlier in the talk. To do that, you have to have your own vision. What does that look like? What I advise you to do is, if you want to be a zealot, if you need to be a zealot, what do zealots do? They write manifestos, right? They're only a paragraph or 2 or 3. What do you really care about and why? And I'm saying you have to nail it to the church door or the CEO's office door. You just need to write it so you know where you're coming from. So write your frickin' manifesto, right? Get committal about what's really important to you and important about the business you're in. What's your vision? So that when you join a conversation or when you facilitate a conversation or participate in one that's around what are we going to do, whether it's what is our department going to do or what is our whole organization going to do long term, you have a place to stand from. If you don't have that, you're just going through process. You're just going through the next strategy workshop. Okay? If you're going to be a catalyst for change, one of the things that leaders do is they produce unsettlement, a term that Chauncey Bell, a friend of mine from the Bay Area, taught me. So we provoke, we make people uncomfortable. That's what leaders do, right? We attack the current common sense. What's the uncommon common sense? How do we make our organizations uncomfortable by challenging them? Right? When we do that, we create and open up new spaces for new questions, for new conversations to happen, new ideas to emerge. That's incredibly valuable for an organization. That's what it means to be a catalyst for change. is to listen to the conversation of others, to make space for that, the emergent concerns, and then speak that, whether they're external forces or internal forces. And almost finally, leadership is about creating energy. If there's one takeaway that I would have through my research that I've found, I'm getting to talk to some pretty amazing people. And it's not just my own experience in interacting with senior leadership of Fortune 1000 for 30 years. It's like getting to do these interviews is just really fun. It's mind candy. Leadership is about creating energy. If you just take that and put it on your monitor, what I mean by that is leaders create energy, they stimulate the system, they perturbate it, they disrupt it, they create unsettlement. They harness that by sanctioning it, saying, you know what, I've made you uncomfortable about this, and this, I agree, is important, that we should actually do something. They focus energy, or they harness it, they focus it, they activate it by authorizing, and they diffuse and empower people to go after and make change. The metaphor of energy and energy production in leadership, I think, is the simplest way to be focused here. So again, put this on your monitor. What have I done with my team and my company to produce energy today? If you do that, you're much more likely to start to make the moves to becoming an effective leader. Lastly, you got to mobilize action, right? Which is removing friction that comes from that inhibits or impacts the commitment to great execution. So we all know that our organizations are full of great people, wonderful, talented people, but it's still a mess. It's a cultural and social mess, right? There's so much friction to actually get the right things done in the right way. How do we lubricate that? We need to build trust. And if this is your strategy for building trust, it isn't going to work, right? I can't tell you how many designers I've seen who have had taken this attitude of, why don't they get it? Why don't they trust me? I'm a designer. I know what to do. I know what's cool. I know what's right. A definition I like of trust is built by taking meaningful actions that create and fulfill expectations and open possibilities. It's a mouthful, I know. It's actually from a book. Fernando Flores, another mentor of mine, Building Trust. Great book. I highly recommend it. That's your job if you want to move up in your organization. You got to build trust. First thing about that, it's built. Trust is granted. You make it, right? Because you earn it. You do it through actions. You take meaningful actions. What kind of actions? Requests, promises, assertions, declarations. You make requests and you accept requests that create and fulfill expectations. Another way of saying that is you make promises and keep them. That's how you build trust. That's how you build your identity. It's not that, it's not complicated. So being scrupulous about how you make promises or requests as a leader, as making promises up or promises down, or accepting requests up and down, is extremely important. Having good hygiene around your language is absolutely critical. What do I mean by good hygiene? Simple example, if I make a request as a leader, am I conscious of what my conditions of satisfaction are for that request? Or do I kind of have a sense about what I want? Is it a lazy request? I'll know it when I see it. Can you do that? Give me a report on, That's a typical request. Give me a report on da-da-da. Or give me that, make sure I get the deliverable next week. When next week? What is the condition of satisfaction? Oh, you want it to be no more than 10 pages. You want it by Wednesday, not by Friday. You actually want Sally to review it before I show it to you. I expect no typos and to be perfect, and I want illustrations. But leaders, we don't make those kinds of clear requests. We make fuzzy requests, which is really hard. And if you receive a request, are you asking by when? What are the conditions of satisfaction? And being committed to really understanding that so you can deliver, so you can earn that trust. It's not rocket science. That's what hygiene around language is, that you need to improve there. So requests and promises, it's basic stuff. So the three things we talked about: mastering change, situational awareness, having that broader view, making sure we hold ourselves accountable to know more than what's happening right now, right in our own backyard, but looking out further, and leadership, doing the things that we need to do to build trust. If you do any one of those three and focus on it, I promise you, your career will move up in a really kind of conscious way. Before I ask if there's time for questions, just want to plug, I've got some design research and innovation seminars that I teach through DMI, one in Chicago and one in Santa Monica coming up. If design research or innovation or strategy is of interest to you, I can get a lot more deeper if I have 2 days than if I have 40 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Go out and lead.